The Case for a Department of Appropriate Technology by Kumar Ploker. Ask yourself, why would a roof with good solar exposure be built without solar panels? It's not like there's something else that needs to go there, and they just sit there, soaking up sun all day. Yet the standard is to build without solar. Why? I want to talk about that in today's presentation. First, I want you to know that I assume two things about you. One, you care about saving money. And two, you have loved ones whose future well-being you care about. When scientists and economists agree that a fully functional alternative to existing technology is both cost-saving and good for the future of humanity, yet it cannot seem to replace the standard version, that suggests it may be time to ask ourselves, should the United States create a Department of Appropriate Technology? LED light bulbs, biodegradable diapers, fully electric vehicles, solar roofs, all have equaled or surpassed their mainstream counterparts' utility, while adding additional benefits to society, but remain severely underutilized by the American public and or undersupplied by American producers and distributors. Why is that? One problem is that those societal benefits are known in economics as externalities. From the perspective of traditional corporations, clean air doesn't have any value. What? The second problem. As corporations grow, they bully the market into sticking with the status quo, often hiring former government officials as lobbyists to strengthen their efforts and instill their corporate values in government. Consumers are left with energy-hogging incandescent bulbs, landfill-stuffing disposable diapers, the severe pollution of internal combustion engines, and barren, useless roofs. I propose the United States set up a Department of Appropriate Technology in order to use the expertise of scientists and peer-reviewed data to steer and, if needed, force the market to move in the direction of products that are simply better, both economically and ecologically. Because the long-term survivability of our society and life on Earth are critical issues, sustainability concerns would be one of the chief criteria in such evaluations. Quote, by the late 1980s, environmental groups were calling for reductions in fossil fuel use. But critics argued that scientific evidence for climate change was uncertain and that reducing emissions would seriously harm economic growth by forcing businesses and households to use more expensive low-carbon energy sources. End quote. Weeks 530. In the time since, we've seen dramatic rises in both the scientific data and the public acceptance of climate change as, quote, about 70% of Americans say there is solid evidence the Earth is warming, end quote, Weeks 525. It is time for our voices to be heard. The opposition to this idea will try to belittle us. Consider what happened to the appropriate technology movement of the 1970s. It fell apart as American leaders mocked its lack of perceived machismo. Quote, critics of appropriate technology often linked it to notions powerfully associated in our culture with the feminine, and Florman accused advocates of passive resistance and wanting to withdraw from the prevailing culture, end quote, Purcell 636. It became un-American to question what the market, meaning its established players, wanted. Remember how in the early 2000s, gas hog Hummers were seen as a symbol of American virility and strength? Without some sort of helpful push, an appropriate technology movement could be squashed once again, despite the fact that, quote, the environment is in even more danger from destructive technologies, and the geopolitics of oil still claim lives and treasure, end quote, Purcell 637. A carefully constructed Department of Appropriate Technology could help Americans get past this tendency to sabotage ourselves. Another issue is corporate greed. This is Stan Ovshinsky. In the early 1990s, he was developing new electric vehicle batteries that could threaten internal combustion vehicles. From Who Killed the Electric Car? Quote, when the nickel metal hydride EV batteries were improved so that they were now lasting longer than the life of the car and cheaper than an engine, Chevron Texaco stepped in and purchased control from General Motors of Ovshinsky Technology, end quote. Then they shelved it. The fuel companies wanted to kill electric vehicles. Now utilities are trying to kill rooftop solar. Quote, there's no doubt these utilities are out to kill rooftop solar, and they're succeeding. They're now driving the agenda, end quote, InsideEVs.com. Clearly, we cannot rely on corporations to lead us to the promised land when it comes to appropriate technology. Unlike corporations and lobbyists, a government guided by experts and scientists can actually speak and act on this topic with authority, as has been shown in Canada, where, quote, we are gradually witnessing the goal of sustainable development being incorporated into public policy and planning documents, end quote, Hartshorn et al., 178. And where Nova Scotia's Environmental Goals and Sustainable Prosperity Act, quote, reflects a substantially nuanced commitment to sustainability that shifts priorities to a fairly well-defined set of environmental targets and a sustainability-based economic strategy, end quote, Brasner, 18. Critics of the appropriate technology movement say that freedom is the American way, and taking away consumer choice is un-American and undemocratic. As conservative voice Charles Gallagher states regarding what he has termed light bulb socialism, quote, before long, the purchase of the expensive new lights will become yet another burdensome government-imposed budget item, end quote, 40. Taking away consumer choice may be un-American, but supporting more and better choices being available is true democracy. Another tactic of appropriate technology's opponents is to dangle small pieces of information in front of the reader in easy-to-digest sound bites or graphics, while leaving out crucial details that fill in the whole story. Consider the image that accompanied Gallagher's story. Such an image conveys the message that LED bulbs, on the left, cost more up front than compact fluorescent bulbs at center, which cost more than incandescent bulbs on the right. In order to show lifetime costs, thanks to bulb longevity and energy usage, the order of piggy banks would need to be reversed. A Department of Appropriate Technology can help bridge the gap of information to America's consumers. Are there other solutions to these problems? Many economists have suggested that a carbon tax would accomplish many of the same goals. Quote, the most technology-neutral policy, the carbon tax, is the most cost-effective across the policy scenarios. When accounting for uncertainty in the various input parameters, the carbon tax is the most cost-effective in about 95% of the simulations, end quote, Fox et al. 144. However, it doesn't have to be an either-or situation. A carbon tax could be used to fund the creation and ongoing work of a Department of Appropriate Technology, which addresses a key argument against the creation of such a department, that it will cost money. Make the polluters pay for it. In the end, the most important thing is that Americans are able to recognize and utilize innovations that make sense both economically and for the health of the planet and its citizens. These more appropriate technologies connect with our deepest values, and they deserve to be brought to the forefront. The creation of a Department of Appropriate Technology could facilitate that. I urge you to communicate with your elected officials, ideally in person at a town hall meeting, but also through other means to show your support for this idea whose time has come. Consider joining with members of your community to form local groups to discuss this issue. It's your turn. Let your voice be heard. Ultimately, your bank account and your loved ones will thank you for it.